far. We're going to start in a couple of minutes now. Just going to give a few more people time to join. So if you haven't got your cup of tea, coffee, water, whatever you need, feel free to do so, and we'll start things off in about 2 minutes. Hello to those just joining. We're going to kick things off in a couple of minutes now, just waiting for a few more people to attend. I imagine there's a couple of meetings just finishing up. So once we have a few more people join, we'll start the session. All right, I can see a few more minutes. Sorry, a few more people joining. We'll just give it 1 more minute and then we will start things. All right, just give everyone a few more seconds and then we'll kick things off. Right, thank you everyone for joining us today. For those of you that don't know me, I'm David. I'm a Senior Account Executive here at Beauhurst, and I specialise within the public sector. So I spend a lot of my time speaking with local government about how economic growth strategies can be delivered and how they can particularly use data to deliver on those goals. In a moment, I'll hand over to Louis, who's going to be discussing a few of the themes along that topic. But during the session, which we'll speak to about 15, 20 minutes, if anyone has any questions, please do drop them in the chat and we'll save 10 minutes at the end to run through those questions. But I'll hand over to Louis to introduce himself.
Great, thank you. Nice to meet you all. I'm Louis Devayya, the Inward Investment and Business Growth Manager at West Northamptonshire Council. My role looks at strategic economic growth, attracting inward investment, place marketing, business support and business engagement, also tourism and enhancing the visitor economy, as well as, of very recently, Northampton Town Centre events and markets. So it's broad, but it's all good for the economy.
Great. So Louis, we're obviously here to talk a little bit more about your economic growth strategy. So you became a Beauhurst customer around a year ago, and I know at the time you were developing sort of the new local growth strategy. So do you want to share a little bit more about how you went about that and what the kind of main themes were?
Yep, so we were developing our economic growth strategy for the first time for West Northamptonshire Council. We're a new unitary that started in 2021 when we merged some of the districts and boroughs. So we spent a few years getting legal, safe and our structures set up. And then we established our kind of ambition of how we wanted to grow the local economy and be proactive. For us, the way in which we want to drive economic growth is by being dynamic and dedicated and innovative. So we wanted a strategy that would align to the ambition we have of realising the potential of West Northamptonshire, which is slightly difficult because it's not a real place. You can't get a train to West Northamptonshire, but it is the combination of Northampton Town and the very important rural villages around us of Daventry and Southamptonshire. And if it still doesn't mean anything to anyone, it's where Silverstone is and the Formula One Grand Prix. So that is what West Northamptonshire is probably known most for around the world. We're also at the centre of the Oxford to Cambridge growth corridor. So we're an important middle piece within Northamptonshire and the South Midlands. When we started developing our strategy, we knew the modern industrial strategy was being developed. So we wanted to make sure that we were harnessing the potential of what the sectors would be and what our area could deliver. So we did an assessment using an external consultant to look into existing strengths of sectors, so what are current capabilities, and then we identified target sectors that we wanted to go after moving forward to increase productivity levels, skills and jobs. Because once we evaluated the data relating to West Northamptonshire, we could see that on a national perspective, we were below the average when it comes to productivity. So we know that we have the capability to drive innovation and strategic growth for UK PLC, but we're not currently doing it, which means there's a bit of a disconnect. Part of that is our location. So being in the centre of the country, we obviously have a high amount of logistics. Logistics doesn't always mean high quality, high paying jobs. Whilst we do need our logistics, and it's a very important industry for us, now we're trying to be a bit more proactive with getting those higher potential industries in that align to the modern industrial strategy. So our kind of themes of our strategy, which was published in March, is driving innovative technologies is our like MO now. We then have looked into kind of increasing productivity levels, skill levels, and the kind of quality ambitious businesses. Plus, we are lucky to be an area which has a high level of startups, but we then have a high level of business deaths. So we need to make sure that we look into business survival and the kind of support available through the different organizations within the council and within the area.
Okay.
Did that answer the question?
Yes, no, absolutely. That was really interesting. I guess as part of that, then talk a little bit more around how you then went on identifying how you can deliver on that. I guess particularly where you have those interesting sectors and particularly the startup focus. What was needed, I guess, to deliver on that goal?
Yep. So whilst we kind of knew it, we didn't have a sufficient data set. So we did have a consultant to develop the economic growth strategy, but that is a moment in time. And obviously, unless we keep paying them, they stop giving us information. So I was very lucky to be, I want to say, targeted on LinkedIn by a Beauhurst salesperson who presented the opportunity of what the data could be used for. And we very quickly realized that not only for our economic growth team was this going to be highly valuable long term, but we also host the South Midlands Growth Hub. They would benefit as well. And our internal business intelligence and population insights team would also benefit from it. So we utilized our UK Shared Prosperity Fund to secure the data system. And every day I will look at it for some reason, something I need from Beauhurst, as in going in and looking into specific businesses or trends or news, things like that, predominantly based off of the different collections and lists I've got for the different sectors, for different size businesses. I get sent a weekly list, I want to say, of new businesses that have been set up so that we can start to target them. So we now have lists of the businesses within our target investment sectors, which are in the modern industrial strategy sectors, set out in terms of who's already in West Northamptonshire. So we can then target kind of those larger businesses or those that are being highly innovative to look into the narrative and ways in which we can sell to the sector to expand on utilizing them as someone that's already in the area, and looking at supply chain and customers and things like that. And we're able to use Beauhurst as a way to track the engagement and the impact. So it's quite important for us that when we're providing support through the Growth Hub, or we've got a business intelligence intellectual property centre, so there are different services that offer business support, we can then put that into Beauhurst and then start tracking them. So when they upload their latest accounts, we can see, oh, we paid a grant to X business and now they've got 5 more jobs. Therefore, the economic benefit that we can actually report back to government based on the grant we provided is effortless. And that is what I found with Beauhurst, is that the only limitation I have found to date, as someone that doesn't actually work for Beauhurst or get any commission, is the capability of the system is only limited by the user's understanding, in terms of, I'm like, oh, I need it for this, 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 this. I get all of that. So the value for me in terms of how we look to address our kind of priorities is regular engagement with our account manager, who I will just discuss. I'm trying to look into business survival, then they will tell me this is how you're going to find what you need, and this is how you'll measure it and track it moving forward. And to be honest, she usually does the work for me, and then I do the follow-on afterwards. So it's helping us in many ways, particularly for my team. But as said, the business intelligence team said that they've already identified a saving in terms of their staff, just because they can use Beauhurst instead of, you know, the separate data sources from like ONS or Companies House and things like that. They're doing it much better. So I think they've said about £5,000 in about 6 months they've saved.
Yeah, really interesting. I'm interested a little bit more around the industry focuses for the council. So I know you mentioned being within the Oxford-Cambridge arc. Obviously, a lot of the councils I speak to have all got very strategic initiatives based on where their locations are, obviously very different across different areas of the country, which is part of why the industrial strategy is designed to focus on key sectors. How are you, I suppose, particularly tackling it for the region in terms of the opportunity with regards to key sectors?
So we are understanding what our offer is, and I'm actually just about to start a piece of work, which is kind of investment pipeline mapping. So understanding the employment allocations and the potential sites within West Northamptonshire, and then matching those to the IS8 sectors, and then looking into the infrastructure requirements and the barriers that we might face to realise the opportunity that if we want to put a advanced manufacturing campus on X site, we might require more energy, or it might be the road network. It might be the skills ecosystem in terms of access to talent and making sure that we've refined the courses available, not only with the University of Northampton in our county, but we're also then part of that wider area that has Oxford, Cambridge and the full ARC Universities group. So that hopefully will give me the specific answers of which sectors are best placed. But we're also developing a new local plan. So as we develop that, we've made it very clear that we almost need to safeguard sites that, whilst might fulfill our HENA, and we might have requirements for certain uses, as said, logistics, which we will have to deliver on and is important for our area, we are looking into how do we diversify that to include potentially life sciences or clean energy, and working directly with developers and having that discussion at a very early date to be able to say, you're potentially going to be putting on a logistics site of 1 million square foot. How could we get that to be a portion for some other industry, and how can we facilitate that, which might mean engagement directly with government to say, here is the opportunity. It might be something we can look into internally. Hopefully the return on the investment, if they were to diversify the sectors, would be stronger, and we might be able to help with the sourcing of occupiers. So if we say, make a portion of it life sciences, that will then increase the return on the rent that you're able to source, and will actively go after the sectors. So attending the conferences, using Beauhurst to say, right, show me the country, now show me this sector. We need a business of about X size that we can see is at a kind of growth potential, and they've secured maybe new funding or something, which is a very simple report I can pull off of Beauhurst, and then we can target those companies and say, I can see you're growing, you're in the right sector that we're targeting, and we know we have the right area for you to utilize as well. So it's win-win. And then we just have those conversations to look into those opportunities. So we kind of use Beauhurst as the facilitator to enable us to have the right conversations with those sectors. And it is also being responsive to the data that we receive back. So looking into the support available, do we need to diversify that, increase it? Where there are funds like UK Share Prosperity Fund, how do we ensure that that is going to benefit the target sectors that we're looking into? So recently we developed driving innovation grants focused on innovation to address that need for increasing productivity and skills. And hopefully we'll be looking to secure new funding as government comes out, touch wood, with whatever is coming next.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually. Obviously, a lot of councils are thinking about what comes next after UK SPF, with it ending next year. I know there was the UKRI announced their new sort of innovation fund, which a lot of councils are looking to identify whether they are innovative enough, I suppose, to be able to apply for that. Is that something that you're looking into, obviously, potentially as part of?
Yes, it is.
How are you, I suppose, using the platform to identify, and put a case together for yourselves as an innovative area?
We're always horizon scanning for opportunities of initiatives the government might be looking into, like investment zones or AI growth zones, things like that, and how do we ensure that we're able to realise those opportunities for West Northamptonshire, as well as understanding what the funds are. For the UKRI funding that's been announced, that for us is about making sure that we work collaboratively with the relevant partners to realise the opportunity for our area. We're a slight anomaly in West Northamptonshire, where we almost understand that the boundaries of the local government area are not the economic boundaries, and it benefits us to be considering things as part of the South Midlands and the Oxford-Cambridge Growth Corridor, which is overseen by the Oxford Cambridge supercluster, which includes people like East West Rail and EMW Law, England's economic heartland. So we've already been talking to them about opportunities for the whole growth corridor to benefit, because obviously what's good for any location within that is good for all of the areas, and the economic benefit will be realised across the entire corridor. And then assessing kind of the opportunity on our specific sites. So if we propose something because we can see that it aligns to the fund, we then need to understand how do our businesses realize that, or what interventions do we need to put in place to target them. So having that kind of core business data tells us, yes, we do have sufficient capability, because we've got, for example, if we were saying a new life sciences centre is being potentially going to be funded, do we have any businesses in the area that we can say, yeah, build on that? Or do we need to change our narrative to say, actually, yes, across the entire Oxford-Cambridge growth corridor, this is the strength. And Beauhurst allows us to assess and almost manipulate that data so that we can put in the strongest case. So rather than saying, oh yeah, West Northampton is best in isolation, we can say it's best because of the wider area. And then we're obviously able to pull off the data to say, this is how many is across the different parts, these are different sectors, and pull it off as a heat map or something like that as well.
Yeah, really interesting. Have there been any, I suppose, instances when you've been doing some work on the data or looking into the industries that there was a bit of a surprise for yourself with regards to businesses you weren't aware of, or quite the size of the opportunity for West Northamptonshire?
Yes, well, it pains me to admit it. It provides so much data. So not only, so the news articles that I receive are things I probably wouldn't otherwise have found, because it's scanning everything across our businesses to look into where new businesses have landed, and because it's so challenging for us to know the businesses that are in the area unless it's in the public domain and accessible. So this way, I just get an email that says these companies have moved in, which are, turnover exceeding 30 million, or they've got over 175 employees, and then instantly I know I can go and target them and get to them. The contact details and the information that's on the business profile is so robust that it's never a cold call. We're already warmed up, because we're able to see you secured funding in 2022, and I can see that you did this and you've got this many staff. So they already feel like you're coming towards them with knowledge and a genuine interest, as opposed to a salesperson that's just trying to kind of engage. I think, as everyone knows, businesses can be slightly skeptical when their council comes knocking, in case they think they're going to get their business rates increased or something. So one of the things we've done is create a sub-brand for business engagement and investment, which is Invest in West Northants. And we found it to be extremely valuable to have a kind of new face of the council for engagement with businesses, but also as a way to celebrate our companies and the offer in which that we sell the place with. So for example, when we were developing our economic growth strategy, we knew some of the companies we might want to target for case studies, for quotes and photos and things. People said, you won't get it. Like, they will not give you things. You're not going to be able to get through the door. Well, we ran reports on Beauhurst. We identified either top sectors, top companies based on what they were doing. They might have had a recent success in terms of securing funding, reached out to them, and we were inundated. So our entire economic growth strategy, all of the photography in it, is from businesses that have given it to us to use for marketing to sell West Northamptonshire. We have things like a quote from the chief operating officer at Mercedes Formula One team saying this is the best place to do business. I was able to connect on LinkedIn with the MD of Carlsberg, the MD of Avon, all just because I checked it on Beauhurst, and then that steered me in the direction. And then when I have found businesses through other ways, or I've seen it in the news or something, I've instantly gone to Beauhurst to be like, get me contact details for them. For example, a recent one was Ionetic, which has a £5 million battery facility in Brackley being developed. Checked them on Beauhurst, found out a load of information on them, got their email addresses and reached out to them. And I have a site tour with them next week. So win-win for us all, making it nice and easy to engage our businesses. They see that we're selling them instead of ourselves, so they buy into it, which makes it easier to target the sector, because usually people don't want to hear from the council unless they're offering financial incentives to relocate to an area. So being able to say, well, it makes sense because so-and-so from Mercedes says this, and so-and-so from this organization says that, and then we can then use that as a way to target and engage. And it's not totally clear that Invest in West Northants is the council. So having that kind of slight gap between the kind of corporate identity that can be sometimes off-putting to a brand which is better aligned to what a business wants to see and understands with their own lingo and jargon. They can look at our website and see, oh yeah, it's quality. It doesn't look like a stuffy council website that you're paying your council tax on or something. And we've been able to get a much increased engagement from it, which is why I'm very keen that we continue using Beauhurst, because we have new companies moving in every day that I want to make sure we keep engaging with, or if it stops, I've got the knowledge that we've gone quiet a bit. We need to do something now to get businesses moving into the area more or starting up.
Yeah, absolutely. And just quickly, I guess, I know we've got a few questions, so I want to make sure we've got some time to answer those. And please do add any more questions you've got in the chat. We will be taking some time in about 2 or 3 minutes just to go through those. But I know, obviously, just then you mentioned quite a lot of really big brands, which are a huge part and really important part of the economy. But I know at the start of your introduction, you mentioned about how important the startup environment is for West Northamptonshire, as it is across pretty much every council that I speak to in the UK. Just really keen to understand how you go about identifying interesting businesses and what kind of stands out to you about the kind of startup scene within West Northamptonshire.
Yeah, I mean, we are about, give or take, 99 point something percent SMEs, with many, many micro businesses, which we do see as the lifeblood of the economy. The large employers don't need us. They might have individual isolated needs for their local authority, but they don't necessarily need the economic growth team to provide business support or anything like that. Whereas the smaller businesses really do need that engagement, and they don't know where to look for it. And even when it's in front of their face, they don't always realize what it is and why they should engage. We do things like sending out business support leaflets as part of our annual NNDR distribution. So it goes to like 14,000 businesses as one of the ways to try to get them to say, forget everything else, there is free business support that should hopefully help you to survive and grow your business. One of the priorities that we have 12 in our strategy is about enabling business support, providing the quality business support that enables businesses to innovate and grow themselves, and the number of ambitious growth businesses, so we can kind of get from startup to scale up. So we're always on the lookout, and as said, because we host the growth hub for all of the South Midlands and the Business and Intellectual Property Centre for the county, we have dedicated teams that their whole role is all about engagement with those smaller businesses. And part of it is, which we maybe have a little bit of a way to go, embedding ourselves within the business community. It's so easy to sit behind a screen and email out and say, why aren't they replying? But once you've kind of gone and met people, that word of mouth starts to be spread out, and engagement with wider partners. So we will always say to people, if you're speaking to a business, just send them to us. There will be something we can help with, which might be information on funding, it might be free recruitment support, it could be support with marketing. We have a dedicated business toolbox, which is a suite of templates of documents that we just send out for free to small businesses, so that they can then work them through with an advisor without having to start from a piece of paper that it almost is too daunting. So we're always very mindful of that engagement and the ongoing relationship to be tracking the growth potential, and any barriers that will prevent business survival being addressed and overcome, which is things as well on a small scale service delivery, but also like supply and demand for commercial premises, and looking into how we make interventions within the market to enable businesses to have that grow on space, so they don't end up moving out of the area, which for our figures would qualify as a business death anyway, because we would have lost them regardless. So it's a multifaceted approach of support engagement, usually always led by the data, so that we know fact before we start having opinion.
Okay, great. That's been really useful. I'm going to go to a couple of questions. There's actually been a couple of questions, I guess, related to that outreach. So, for example, let me just flag it up on the screen so everyone can see which I'm answering. So there's a question from Danielle around how you contact businesses, and I guess what you find to be the most successful approach. So I guess this is particularly when you're identifying new businesses that you want to reach out to. Talk a bit through about how you go about doing that and what you find most successful.
I find so the data on Beauhurst to engage with businesses is completely GDPR compliant, and I was outright told if anyone ever queried it, there is no risk whatsoever, but I can just send them over to Beauhurst directly to hear how it is compliant, legal, and totally permitted. It's usually a range of ways that I would engage with the businesses. I'm quite active on my LinkedIn, so I would probably first be adding people on LinkedIn and trying to message them through that way. But you can run a report to get all of the contact details, so the email addresses for as many people in the organization as possible, and email out to them as an organization. Obviously, it needs to be tailored so they don't think I've just been sent a complete sales email I'm just deleting, which isn't what we'd want anyway. I would always make it so that it's a kind of dedicated, I'm trying to engage with your business for this reason that aligns with our strategy. Can we have a conversation about this? One of the things as well that we find can be quite valuable is the senior colleagues that we can pull on. So when we say, I'd love to have a meeting with you, could myself and our executive director come in? That tends to get a more likely a yes than a nothing. And I'm fortunate to have a very proactive full senior management team that I could always say, actually, someone needs to come on this because we're meeting their chief exec or something.
Okay, nice. Really useful. Thank you very much. There's a question here around how collections are built on Beauhurst. I can answer a slight bit, but I guess it'd be useful to hear your point from a specific perspective. So with Beauhurst, you're allowed to build collections on companies that you upload. So that might be companies you've already worked with from a grant. They can be built as what's called a collection. And that's essentially a list of companies that you want to follow and track for updates. So in the instance of a project you've worked with or a set of grants you've given out, when you're doing your impact reporting, you can very quickly look at those companies and see how they've developed since you engage with them. But you can also build a search of companies that are interesting. So that might be building a collection for every single industry that you focus on within part of the industrial strategy. And then you can save that as a collection within the platform that again allows you to continue to, one, get updates on those businesses, but also be alerted anytime a new business hits that criteria. So rather than having to continue to do new searches, you automatically flag those businesses and you can engage with them as part of your regular outreach. Louis, is there anything you do in particular when it comes to, I suppose, building and engagement with collections?
To be honest, when developing collections, I usually look to the team to start me off, but it is so easy that I have spent time just pressing all the buttons to see. So I could filter by sector, or I could filter by those businesses that have received a certain type of funding. So the kind of granular detail that you can get down to is so incredible, whether it could be filtering them down by buzzword, because SIC code isn't always the most up to date and it might lose you some. So I could filter specifically by a buzzword that should encapsulate more of the businesses I'm typing to engage with. I've done reports where I've looked for Japanese-owned companies within the area because I was trying to target FDI from Japan. I've looked at numbers of companies that have female owners because we were doing a dedicated campaign for female-owned businesses within our area. So the potential of collections is almost unlimited. It's more about who are you trying to get to and how, and then there is a way to run that report to get that data.
Okay, really interesting. I think we've got time maybe for one, maybe two if they're quick. There was a couple of questions most recently from John and Anna. John sort of is asking around the ROI you see from using something like this, and Anna asked around how you're using Beauhurst to build the investment pipeline you mentioned earlier, which, if I'm not misinterpreting, I think probably relates to getting kind of additional grants and that side of things. I guess that kind of feeds into the ROI question. I think particularly when it comes to councils, obviously being able to dedicate funds to something like Beauhurst or any kind of tools of interest is a big important topic. So where have you found the kind of biggest return on investment, I suppose, from using something like Beauhurst? What have you seen?
I think the beauty of my account with Beauhurst is that we have 3 licenses that have been separated into different teams across the organization. So whilst the cost can be slightly higher than we in public sector tend to always have the budget for, actually, when you break it down, particularly between those licenses, and I mean, I'm even looking into more licenses just so I can get more teams using it, because every council team is using data, and this is just such a robust way to get it. So in terms of return of investment, it's the kind of missed opportunity we wouldn't otherwise have. So that engagement with those employers, being able to map the good news and things like that. Suddenly, if I can see, well, I've promoted the area, I've met with a business, they've moved in, well, the business rates return for that will far exceed any costs of the time and the systems we've had to use to get them. In terms of our investment pipeline, that will be about our economic growth strategy, which is on our website, the target sectors, and then we will, once we understand the opportunities of different employment allocations in terms of what would our dream sectors be we want to safeguard them for, I'll then look on Beauhurst to target the companies, because I'll know I'm looking for a certain developer or a business of a certain size within the UK or within a 50-mile radius of our area, and then be able to target them all and say, here is an investable opportunity. We think we should have a discussion about this because we want to realise it with you, and we've got government's backing potentially.
Okay, perfect. sorry to jump in there. We are at time now, and I know everyone's super busy. So want to give a big thank you to Louis, obviously, for your time today. And thank you, obviously, everyone for turning up. The recording will be sent round to everyone. And if I didn't get to your question, I do apologise. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn. Most of you I may have spoken to already, so feel free to contact me by email address if there's anything I can particularly answer. And I'm sure Louis is open to having further conversations. So thanks again, everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your days.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
See you.